You didn't hire me for my black voice. You hired me for my black face, and that ain't gonna get it.
Welcome to the Jackie Ray Show.
I am wearing this shirt that says support black media because as a journalist, a black journalist, I am part of black media. Before I get into this tea that I know some of you guys want, I want to instill that into every black journalist out there. You are your own brand, and you need to take steps now to build your own brand so that your brand can possibly sustain you if you need it to. And with that, I know hopefully you guys have seen my Instagram where I have encouraged you to sign our petition. We are trying to unionize at the Long Beach Post, and it's very much needed. I am not going to get into all the tea, some of the really concerning things that have happened, but I'm going to say this. I am extremely proud of my colleagues and the way that we immediately banded together and supported one another and loved on each other and have been using the buddy system. If you feel down, if you need a shoulder to cry on, we are there for each other. I'm going to share my personal experience because I feel comfortable doing so because it happened to me. And I think the biggest part of this story that I want to tell really has nothing to do with the Post. It's just a cautionary tale, I would say. I think sometimes we might shoot the messenger because we don't like the messenger, and we might not even listen to the message. And I think that's, hindsight is always 2020. When I first came into the Post, there was a gentleman who wrote a whole manifesto that I didn't even read. I'm going to be honest with you. He and I did sit down and talk about it. Actually, he and his wife, him and his wife sat down and talked about it and about their concerns about leadership. I still dismissed it, though, because he just wasn't a likable person. And I thought he was probably the problem. I think that was my first clue that I probably should have continued to invest in myself. The next clue should have been when my first colleague that I really admired, her diligence within the Latino and Spanish speaking community, and that's Crystal. She went on to win awards in San Diego. She had also raised similar concerns. I was the closest to her as far as friendships that I was immediately building. And I just said, you know what? Maybe she's just overreacting. I dismissed it. Once again, part of that is because I was so tired working freelance, y'all. So for me to get into a newsroom that got me completely out of property management, I still do work freelance, but I don't have to work so much freelance that I don't have time for myself. And I'm just always trying to not turn down jobs because you think if you turn down a job, you're not going to get that next job. It's just a whole mess mentally. And I was just so happy to be out of that I was like, y'all can miss me with your drama. I don't care. I am happy. So I think that's my first message, especially when you're going into a new situation. Make sure you listen to those who have been there longer than you. Take everything with a grain of salt. Use your own discernment, but don't be dismissive, which is what I did. So as I'm going on in my career, I'm enjoying my time in Long Beach. Let me tell you, I love being able to go out and be in the Black community. Yes, part of my job is earning the trust of the Black community in Long Beach because I've only been in Long Beach. My 3-year anniversary with the Long Beach Post will be May 10th. So it's a very short time when you consider in Long Beach. It's very unique in that way. This is a city that has like 3rd generation Long Beachians here. And that's just not something I've lived in. I feel like every city in SoCal, and that's just not something you find. And so it's a beautiful thing to get to know the community. My number is circulating in the community. I just got a text before I started recording this about something that's happening in the community. And it's a great thing. It makes you feel empowered to do your job better, which is all you really want to do. That being said, it's not lost on me that I would not have this job if George Floyd had not been murdered. That is how I got my job. The antennas went off when Black people really started raising hell and saying, no, y'all gonna listen today. Then the Long Beach Post listened and they hired me. In my opinion, my initial opinion, that was not a good thing. They should have definitely hired Black people. It's Long Beach. But at the same time, if you were looking for a Black person who cares about the Black community, who's pro-Black, who's going to get in the trenches with the community, you got the right one. So kudos to you for doing your due diligence and finding me. So I felt very proud. I felt very honored that they saw me in that light. Fast forward, I should have picked up on another thing, and that's they just really didn't want me to write, which was weird to me because it was a newspaper, but I should have picked up on that sooner. But I'm going to be honest. Again, I think some of that was just I was so happy to not work freelance, y'all. But now you fast forward, we separate from our former owner, which I think is a great thing. I think all news stations and papers, as much as they can, should be independent because that allows you to be the news source that the community needs. And that's so vital to any democracy. I say that over and over again, but I think it's a great thing that we took that step. I don't think we took the step properly because when you form a nonprofit, what's supposed to happen is the board is supposed to select the CEO, and that's not what happened. And in our case, I think that sometimes you have to admit, this is not my wheelhouse. I can't do it. I'm in over my head. And I think when you don't do that, that is when the ship starts to sink, especially if you're going to say, oh, no, I can do that, because it's just going to, perpetuate the problem. My story, the problem that I had immediately was as I'm trying, because, the deeper you get into the community, the more people reach out to you, the more you're like, oh, I want to tell those stories. And I'm a columnist. So as a columnist, I can offer my opinions. I'm like, oh my gosh, this person said this. Let's talk about this. I can start these conversations, which is what a column, a lot of times it's supposed to do. Let's start these conversations. I struggled. I'm gonna leave it at that. I struggled to tell these stories. If you know me, you know that only can happen a few times before I'm like, hold up, come let me holler at you. So I was like, this is how I'm feeling. You didn't hire me for my Black voice. You hired me for my Black face, and that ain't gonna get it. I was, we hemmed and hawed. There was a lot of gaslighting. And then finally an admission. This stung me, but I was glad that the truth finally came out. But I was told that there was no respect for me from leadership for the first 2 years of my career at the Long Beach Post, which again confirmed you hired me for my Black face, not my Black voice. Because in what world do you hire somebody to do a very specific job if you don't respect that they can do it? So that was the moment for me. And I retreated. I'm not even gonna lie. I retreated. That day I was like, oh, I know a lot of y'all know what this finger is like. Oh, nah. For those of you who are listening to the podcast, just imagine. And so I'm like, oh, no, not today, Satan. So in that moment, I came back home and then I had to process all the different ways in which I had failed myself. So in that moment, yes, I was angry, but I also had to be accountable to myself on how I failed myself. Because for 2 years, because if you notice, I just restarted this podcast. This podcast used to be called At the Half because I would talk sports. I would talk politics, and then at the half, I would talk sports. And then so it was a 3-segment podcast. But I felt like because I'm so focused on Black community issues on that podcast, I felt like I was splitting my time. So I stopped splitting my time. That's how I saw it. Hindsight's 2020. I wasn't splitting my time. I was investing in my brand, which is me and the Black community. That's my whole brand. And so to hear that and to acknowledge that, and I was cool. I was like, all right, cool. I appreciate your honesty. We hugged it out. But then you have to go back to work. You have to go back to work knowing that for 2 years of your life, they didn't respect you. And the reason was because I came from the broadcast world, which every time I hear that, that's the most asinine thing to me. How do y'all think that broadcast news is made? Do you think that they just sit down and there's some magic genie that pops this information in their head? Do you think that they didn't have to do interviews? They didn't have to do research? How y'all think this happens? Because this isn't the first time I've heard it. So if you're one of those people who think that, stop. Don't be an elitist. Be smarter than that. News is news, right? If you want to write it or if you want to speak it, news is news. And to be quite honest, visual media is the preferred media. So anyway, I'm so proud of this newsroom. There's not a better newsroom that I've worked in. And as far as people who give a damn, and I ask you to stand with us. I know I never edit my rants. If this is randomly edited, it's because I was just giving y'all too much tea. And remember, life is short, so make it good. We'll see you next time.